So this is a part 2 of the hip padding class because a lot of people had questions concerning the layering of the fabric for the hip padding process. So let me walk you through it. So for the first layer that carries the hip padding itself, I like to use a stretchy fabric so that it can spread with the client's body. So I use the stretchy part across the hips like so. So when you're placing the pattern paper, make sure the stretchy part is across the hip area. And then you're going to cut it and add just the allowance like we have done here already. So now you're going to place it on another fabric and go down by 2 inches. You can use any fabric of your choice, but generally I like to use a crepe fabric because it's more comfortable. So the hip padding length is 18 inches. You're going to mark that point. The 2 inches is where the hip padding will start from, like I explained in the previous tutorial on hip padding. So you're going to just extend those lines outward because this second fabric we're going to cut is the one that is going to have the allowance for the hip padding to sit properly in between the dress. So in between the layers. So you're going to go out by 0.75 inches along the hip line, and then you're going to connect that 0.75 inches using your French curve or your French ruler. So you're going to connect the 0.75 inches to the 2 inches point below the waistline like so, and then you're going to flip your curved ruler, keeping the curved side at the 0.75 inches mark, and then you're going to connect it to the 18 inches at the bottom of the skirt block. Try as possible not to draw sharp lines so that the outer layer doesn't come out looking very sharp. So blend in your lines properly, and then when you're done, go ahead and cut out that layer. So notice that we already cut the first layer, which was the layer that had the stretchy material. So you can use Lycra Lining. Well, I use London crepe for this because it's quite stretchy in one direction. So I use the London crepe because it is stretchy. Now that 2 inches point, you're going to notch it so that when you're placing the hip pad, you would know where to place it when you're about to, attach it to the fabric. So for the back, we're going to go through the same procedure like we did for the front. So you're just going to pin down the first layer, which is a stretchy fabric. So to get the second layer, you would also go down by 2 inches like we did earlier for the front. Notice that we already cut the first layer, which is the London crepe, like I said earlier. Just for clarification purpose, I'm just going through the process again for the back. So, and then also notice that I'm taking the measurement from the skirt block itself, not the fabric. So you're going to extend those lines outward again, and then extend the hip line like so. Go with your tape and measure 0.75 inches, and you're going to mark that point. Next, you're going to use your curved ruler to connect the points like we did for the front, keeping the curved side of the ruler at the 0.75 point. Notice that I didn't use the most curved part of the ruler just so that I wouldn't get a sharp curve. Then I flipped my ruler and then connected the lower part to that's the 18 inches point to the 0.75 inches point. And this is how I got the second layer. The reason for this second layer is just to conceal the outline of the hip padding so that it doesn't show through the dress. Because if you don't do it, you have, the corners of the hip foam sticking out, and we don't want that. So I like to conceal it with a middle layer. So again, the first one that we cut is the one that we'll put the hip padding on, which is the hip foam. That's the one we'll put it on. That's a stretchy material. And then this second layer is the one that will conceal the hip padding. Again, I notched the 2 inches point just so that I would know where the hip padding is starting from when I want to place the foam. And this is a close-up illustration side by side with the two of them there. So the first one that is attached to the paper just has the 1 inch sewing allowance, and then the second one has the extension of the 0.75 inches. And then notice the curve from the 2 inches point down to the 18 inches point. Next, you want to cut the outer layer. So this is a raw silk fabric. And then we extended the length of the skirt, and then it also has the allowance for the hip padding. So when you are done extending the skirt block, make sure that it carries the excess allowance on the hip level so that the hip padding can sit properly in it as well. And this is how you place the layers. This is the stretchy fabric that carries the hip pad, and the other layer directly on the dress is the one that we cut after the one that we used in extending the hip level. I hope it is clear now.